Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, as the death toll from Morocco's devastating earthquake continues to mount, surpassing 2,860, the psychological impact of the destruction weighs heavily on individuals and the nation. Also, Libya calls for international help and declares 3 areas in eastern Cyrenaica disaster zones after authorities say that extreme flooding around the city of Derna has cost at least 2,000 lives. And the African Union finally starts its week as a member of the G20. It's granted full membership of the Intergovernmental G20 Forum following its eventful weekend summit in India. But first, over 2,860 people have died in the massive earthquake that hit Morocco last Friday. Almost as many have been injured. The toll for both continues to climb. The quake was the strongest the country suffered in over a century. Survivors have worked alongside bulldozers to dig through flattened buildings in the hopes of finding people still alive. Most of the destruction happened in rural Al Haus in the high Atlas Mountains, which is particularly difficult to access in the wake of the 6.8 magnitude disaster. Many survivors across the area have spent the last few nights sleeping outside. Some, though, in the capital Marrakesh have found shelter. That's where our Luke Schrago is.
Here in Marrakesh, a sports centre in the city's Medina has now been given over to new purpose, sheltering people who lost their homes in Friday's earthquake. With the area's old buildings disproportionately hit, a large number of people have been in need of help. They told us of finding cracks through the walls, leaving their homes unsafe, or having outright collapsed, leaving them unable even to retrieve their belongings. They are who facilities like this are meant to help. 2 shelters on a football pitch like this can hold 750 people, and there are plans for 2 more such sites elsewhere in Marrakesh, where they can shower, receive medical attention from 3 doctors on hand, be fed, shower and sleep. However, even if the shock from the earthquake is beginning to fade, anxiety is on the rise, particularly with victims who've lost everything. They're grateful for the aid they're getting, but their questions remain. How long will they have to live like this? And how long will such help last into the future?
Oh, with so much still uncertain, the damage done to stricken areas is profound and long-lasting. Once the aid crews and soldiers leave, those affected will have to face the complex task of rebuilding communities, both physically and mentally. Clinical psychologist Ghislaine Thial tells me more about how the devastating national disaster has impacted her country.
The impact is, of course, major, since almost 10 million people were directly impacted physically or psychologically, since we could feel the earthquake from Agadir to Casablanca, which is more or less 800 kilometers if I'm right. Well, if you see psychologically, my point of view is that you can find 3 different psychological impacts levels, meaning there's the, of course, directly physically injured, losing people, losing the father, mother, then leading to social and economical drama, or literal drama. Second of all, you have all the people, for example, the one that were seen in Marrakesh, that saw their life change, of course, losing their homes, or also seeing themselves kind of dying, which is going to be another type of impact. Also, and finally, all the other millions of people that literally felt, but thankfully were not directly harmed, but will lead, of course, to anxiety, PTSDs, even though they were not straightforwardly directly impacted. And all of those levels will have to be addressed differently, but have to be addressed as soon as possible.
So you've outlined just so many different types of loss in this kind of situation, and how so many different kinds of people will be facing their own difficulty and trauma after what's happened. What kind of mental health do you think that those who've been most directly impacted, those who've lost their loved ones, their homes, their town, what kind of mental health support would you estimate that they would need in the short and medium term? And also, what is available in Morocco?
Well, in terms of availability, the particularity of this event is that the most impacted region was the one that has the less infrastructures facilities in terms of health, in general health, not even mental health, but general health. However, government has done a crazy job, an incredible job that we were really proud of, given today, like sending over 1,000 medical doctors over these areas for the immediate help, like the physical, of course, but also psychological, since all specialties of kind of medical specialties were sent there, which step by step will be addressed, since you cannot, like, since every, of course, human is very different. Every kind of person, depending on the capacity of the resilience, the availability of mental health support will offer, and also the type of medical help. And in this case, first of all, and it's which is needed is to share what every people have felt together, which the whole country is only talking about this, and this mass communication helps fading away the major trauma, helping also the PTSD to not be that strong.
So community is really important in terms of making people feel that they have the tools available to deal with what they're going through. But do you think, in your experience, that victims of trauma in Morocco are likely to seek professional help, either now or in the future?
Well, Morocco has a long story with psychological mental health support. But in my experience, before the earthquake, we could see already a massive change in terms of addressing. We have a lot of new psychiatrists, a lot of new psychologists that are trying to work, and you have a lot also of associations that are doing an amazing job, and that are now doing for the earthquake an amazing job. So I think, like, the major point will be how the media is sensitizing the country. The more the people will be aware that there isn't a mental support, that I'm pretty sure they will definitely go through the process, because they just have to be explained what is given, how it is given, and for what it is given.
Dr. Ghislaine Thiel there in Casablanca, giving us some insight into some of the psychological toll taken by this earthquake in Morocco. Now, since Friday, countries from around the world and across the African continent have rallied around the kingdom in solidarity. Only a few international offers of assistance have been accepted so far, though. Clarisse Fortuné has more.
It took this military unit 8 hours to navigate the damaged roads leading to the remote village of Imin Tala, devastated by Friday's earthquake. Help coming from Spain, one of the only 4 nations Morocco has accepted from, with Britain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. But other countries have also offered some support, including from the African continent. The African Union has expressed its condolences. Its president said, "I learned with great sadness of the tragic consequences of the earthquake that hit the Kingdom of Morocco." Algeria, which broke off ties with Morocco 2 years ago, put aside their differences and offered its airspace for humanitarian and medical flights to Morocco. Support also coming from Tunisia. President Kais Saied has authorized to send civil protection teams to help the kingdom's search and rescue efforts. The Gambian national team was in Marrakesh during the earthquake, ahead of a qualifying game against Congo on Sunday. The players reported to hospitals to donate blood for the injured.
Well, Libya has called for international solidarity and declared eastern Cyrenaica province a disaster area after flooding that authorities say has cost at least 2,000 lives. Up to 6,000 people may be missing. Several coastal towns were hit by the extreme waters after Storm Daniel swept over the Mediterranean on Sunday. The greatest destruction, though, was around the city of Derna. Clem Waller has more.
After 24 hours, all that remains are flooded homes and floating debris. On Sunday and Monday, Mediterranean storm Daniel swept through eastern Libya, washing away entire neighborhoods. Authorities fear a heavy death toll as they dispatched aid to the afflicted cities. Speaking to local media, the prime minister of the parallel government controlling eastern Libya, Osama Hamad, deplored the losses.
The dead exceeded 2,000. Entire neighborhoods were swept into the sea.
Entire neighborhood have disappeared, Dr. Osama?
Yes, disappeared with their residents.
Over the weekend, Libyans shared footage on social media showing flooded houses and roads in many areas across the eastern part of the country. They pleaded for help as floods besieged people inside their homes and in their vehicles. Multiple cities reported flooding, including Benghazi, Al-Marj, Al-Baida, Susa, and Derna. Local authorities believe that over 5,000 people have gone missing in Derna, which was the worst-hit city. They declared 3 days of mourning and ordered flags across the country to be lowered to half-mast. Troops from the Libyan National Army were deployed to help residents in Benghazi and other eastern towns. A spokesperson for the forces said they lost contact with 5 troops who were helping besieged families in Al-Baida.
Well, the African Union started the week as a member of the G20. The continental body of 55 member states now has the same status as the European Union, the only other regional bloc with full membership of the Intergovernmental G20 Forum. Now, the seismic shift comes after a summit in India over the weekend. Clotilde Azar has more from Addis Ababa, where the African Union's headquarters are found.
This is a victory for the African Union, which has been asking to be a member for 7 years. It's the first time that the African Union represents the continent as a global power in itself, inside an international organization. This will strengthen the G20 and also strengthen the voice of the Global South, declared Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With full G20 membership, the organization will influence decisions, especially on development financing.
A reform of international financial institutions has often been called for by African countries, by the African Union, because access to development financing is often 10 times more expensive for African countries than for industrialized countries. So being part of the G20, a forum which, even if it remains informal, still has a very great influence on the way consensus is created at the level of international financial institutions.
This is also a challenge for African Union to represent 55 very different countries and to create the consensus. It will have to speak with one voice to defend its interest in economic development, but also in environmental issues. The African Union advocates a global and united response to climate change, which Africa contributes to the least but is affected by the most.
Clotilde Azar there for us. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.